There comes a time in life when the storm you thought would destroy you becomes the very force that shapes your destiny. You see, surviving a narcissistic relationship isn't just about getting through the pain. It's about discovering the extraordinary strength that was buried within you all along. When someone tries to manipulate your worth, silence your voice, and break your spirit, something remarkable begins to happen deep inside your soul. You begin to awaken. Through the tears, through the confusion, through the moments when you doubted everything you were, you learn endurance. You learn faith. You learn that your value was never determined by how someone treated you, but by the light you carry within. Every wound becomes a teacher. Every betrayal becomes a bridge. And every lonely night becomes a whisper from the universe telling you, you are not finished yet. When you rise from a relationship that tried to shrink you, you rise differently. You rise wiser, softer, yet stronger than ever before. You no longer seek approval from those who can't see your worth. You begin to live for the truth of who you are. That is tremendous growth. That is transformation. That is the divine power of turning heartbreak into purpose. Because in the end, surviving a narcissistic relationship isn't the end of your story. It's the beginning of your awakening. It's where your faith grows deeper, your boundaries grow stronger, and your spirit shines brighter than it ever has before. Life has a way of knocking you down when you least expect it, especially when you've given your heart to someone who never knew how to hold it with care. Being in a narcissistic relationship doesn't just bruise your feelings. It breaks something deeper inside. It shatters your trust, your confidence, and your belief that love should be safe. You start to question who you are, wondering how you became a shadow of the person you once knew. But that's where the transformation begins. Not when you're strong, but when you're broken. Because in that brokenness lies the seed of something powerful, something boundless. When everything you thought you needed falls apart, you begin to rebuild from the inside out. You stop chasing validation and start seeking peace. You stop begging for understanding and start finding clarity in your own voice. The pain that once crushed you starts to fuel your purpose. You begin to understand that the person who tried to break you was actually shaping you for something far greater. Every disappointment becomes a doorway to a deeper strength you didn't know existed. And every tear becomes a silent reminder that your spirit can bend, but it cannot break. You rise slowly at first, unsure, trembling maybe, but you rise. You learn that true power doesn't come from control or manipulation. It comes from self-awareness, from grace, from the quiet decision to keep standing, even when no one's watching. You stop measuring your worth by someone else's approval, and you start walking with a confidence that no one gave you. You built it through pain, through truth, through resilience. You look back one day and realize the person who once cried for peace is now the very embodiment of strength. From broken to boundless, that's not just a phrase. It's a transformation of the soul. You learn that the cracks in your heart aren't signs of weakness, but windows for the light to come through. You stop asking why the pain happened and start seeing what it taught you. You realize the storm didn't come to drown you. It came to clear your path. And when you finally step into that light, when you stand in your truth, you understand the beauty of survival. It's not just about making it through. It's about rising stronger, freer, and more unstoppable than you ever imagined. There comes a point when you realize the person you became in that toxic space was never truly you. You were molded by someone else's control, shaped by their manipulation, silenced by their ego. You gave pieces of yourself away just to keep the peace, and in doing so, you lost touch with the sound of your own voice. But there's something unshakable inside every soul that refuses to stay small forever. One day, you wake up tired of walking on eggshells, tired of apologizing for existing, and you decide it's time to reclaim your power. Reclaiming your power isn't about revenge or proving them wrong. It's about remembering who you are when no one else is defining you. It's about looking in the mirror and seeing someone worth fighting for again. You start making decisions from your own truth, not from fear. You begin to rebuild boundaries that honor your peace, and you learn that no is not a weakness, but a declaration of self-respect. You stop trying to fix the person who broke you and start healing the person they left behind. That's the art of self-rediscovery. Not chasing who you were, but becoming who you were always meant to be. You start reconnecting with the little things that bring you joy. The quiet moments, the laughter, the stillness of your own company. You begin to dream again, to believe again, to trust your instincts again. You realize your intuition was never the problem. It was just drowned out by the noise of manipulation and doubt. Now it speaks louder, clearer, guiding you toward peace instead of chaos. You begin to feel your strength, not as a wall, but as a steady rhythm inside your chest that says, I'm back. I'm whole. I'm enough. When you reclaim your power, you don't need to announce it to the world. Your energy speaks for itself. You walk differently. You carry yourself with quiet confidence. You no longer need validation because your worth is no longer up for debate. That's when healing becomes freedom. You've taken back your voice, your peace, your purpose. You've turned pain into wisdom, fear into faith, and survival into strength. And as you stand in that truth, you understand that no one can ever take from you what you finally learned to give yourself. There's a moment after the chaos when silence finally sets in. The noise of their manipulation fades, and what's left are the wounds. The deep, invisible ones that ache in places words can't touch. You carry those scars like unanswered questions, wondering why you had to go through so much pain to learn what love is not. But in time, something begins to shift. You realize that those wounds aren't just reminders of what was taken from you. They're the beginnings of wisdom, growing in the cracks of what was once broken. Healing doesn't come overnight. It's not a clean, straight path. It's a messy, sacred journey where you learn to sit with the pain instead of running from it. You learn that true strength isn't about pretending you're fine. It's about facing the darkness, acknowledging it, and transforming it into something meaningful. Every wound holds a story, and every story holds a lesson. You begin to see how every betrayal taught you discernment, how every lie sharpened your intuition, how every heartbreak showed you what kind of love you truly deserve. You start to understand that the pain was never meant to define you. It was meant to refine you. Like gold purified in the fire, you come out of it stronger, wiser, and more radiant than before. That's the alchemy of healing. Turning what was meant to break you into the very force that builds you. You begin to walk with compassion, not just for yourself, but for others who still don't see their worth. Because once you've seen darkness and survived it, you carry a light that can guide others through theirs. You no longer see your scars as something to hide. You wear them as proof that you've endured, that you've evolved. They remind you of your courage, your patience, your faith in something greater than your pain. The lessons etched into those wounds become your greatest teachers. You stop asking, "Why me?" and start saying, "Thank you for showing me what I needed to grow." That's when healing turns into wisdom. When pain turns into power. You've turned your suffering into strength, your heartbreak into purpose, and your wounds into wisdom. You realize that everything you went through wasn't to destroy you, but to prepare you for the person you were always meant to become. There comes a time when holding on hurts more than letting go. You fight to make sense of it, trying to understand how someone who claimed to love you could also be the source of so much pain. You replay conversations in your head. You search for closure that never comes. And you exhaust yourself trying to fix what was never meant to be whole. But there's power in the moment you decide to stop fighting for what drains you. Freedom begins when you let go, not in anger, but in peace. It's not weakness to release something that's been breaking you. It's the purest form of strength. Because letting go doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you finally start caring for yourself. When you let go, you give yourself permission to breathe again. You create space for healing, for clarity, for peace. You stop chasing answers and start finding acceptance. You begin to understand that closure doesn't come from the other person. It comes from the decision to move forward, even without it. You stop waiting for apologies, explanations, or redemption. You realize you don't need any of it to be free. The power of release is in understanding that not everything deserves a place in your heart, and not everyone deserves access to your spirit. You reclaim your energy, your time, your joy. You stop watering dead plants and start nurturing your own garden again. It's not easy. Your mind will pull you back to memories. Your heart will whisper what ifs, but your soul will keep pushing you forward. Because deep down, it knows peace is waiting on the other side of release. You learn that love isn't meant to cage you. It's meant to lift you. And when it doesn't, walking away becomes an act of self-respect, not loss. The strength to let go is the strength to trust that your future holds more than your past ever could. One day, you'll wake up and realize that the weight you carried so long was never yours to bear. The moment you release it, you rise lighter, freer, stronger. You no longer define yourself by what broke you, but by what you chose to walk away from. That's freedom, not in holding tighter, but in opening your hands, letting go, and finally allowing life to fill them with something better. There's a moment in every journey when you realize no one is coming to save you. You've waited for someone to understand, to fix, to heal what you couldn't carry alone. But the truth is, the power to rise has been inside you all along. Surviving a narcissistic relationship teaches you that you can't depend on the person who broke you to help you rebuild. You learn that the rescue you've been waiting for is the strength that wakes up inside you when you finally decide enough is enough. That's where you start becoming the hero of your own story. Not in perfection, not in control, but in courage. The courage to stand tall after being torn down. The courage to believe in yourself again after someone made you doubt everything you are. Heroes aren't born in comfort. They're forged in fire. Every sleepless night, every tear, every heartbreak became your training ground. You learned endurance when you wanted to give up. You learned self-worth when someone made you feel small. You learned patience when the healing felt endless. You began to rise, slowly, quietly, rewriting your story one choice at a time. You started to speak up when silence used to feel safer. You began to trust your intuition again, to honor your boundaries, to protect your peace like it's sacred. Because it is. You stopped asking for permission to live and started walking like you belong. Because you do. That's what heroes do. They lead themselves out of the darkness. You begin to see your life differently. You're no longer a victim of what happened to you, but the author of what comes next. You take the pain that was meant to destroy you and turn it into purpose. You take the lessons and use them to build something stronger, something real. The person who once broke you no longer holds power over your story. You do. You start helping others find their light. Not because you have to, but because you remember what it felt like to be in the dark. And that's the truest kind of strength. Becoming the hero of your own story means you've stopped waiting for someone else to define your worth. You've taken your power back, piece by piece, day by day. You've turned survival into victory. You've become the proof that even after the deepest hurt, you can rise, you can rebuild, and you can shine with a strength that's entirely your own in the end. Surviving a narcissistic relationship is not just about healing. It's about awakening. You've walked through fire and come out transformed. You've learned to stand in your truth, to protect your peace, and to love yourself in ways no one else ever could. The pain that once held you captive has become the very force that set you free. You no longer see yourself as broken, but as rebuilt, stronger, wiser, and more grounded than before. You've discovered that your worth was never lost. It was simply waiting for you to remember it. This is your victory, your rebirth, your beginning. Because when you rise from something that was meant to destroy you, you don't just survive, you evolve into the person you were always destined to become, fearless, free, and full of light that no darkness can ever dim.